Yeah, welcome everyone to our Future Shift sessions. It's our second one this quarter in a couple months. To celebrate B Corp month, but also because we have some exciting stuff to talk about, which is the new evolution of the B Corp standards, which is potentially a little bit scary. Hopefully not too bad. But we're here to kind of break it down for everyone for it. So the next 50 minutes or so is going to look a little bit like this. So we'll have a bit of an introduction into what we're doing today or what we're going to be talking about. Then we're going to go into what's happening with the evolution of the standards, which is a deep dive into the context, kind of the reasoning behind it. Why have B Corp decided to change all the standards? What's wrong with the current set? What could be better? Then we're going to go into the actual requirements themselves, or what we know about them so far. It's slightly smoke and mirrors at this stage, but we're going to do everything that we know so far. Then we're going to open up the floor for just some like Q&As. So if you have any questions at any point throughout this webinar, just put them in the chat, and hopefully we'll be able to kind of dive into all of them towards the end. It's going to be probably quite a few things which obviously going to affect most of you on this call, but they're going to affect exactly what an interpretation of them effectively is what we want to go into a bit deeper. And then hopefully we'll have everything rounded up by 1:55. If you haven't eaten your jam sandwiches yet, you should have a bit of time to tuck in at the end. So who are we? For those of us, or for those of you rather, that don't know too much about us at Future Shift, we are a sustainability consultancy, predominantly help businesses through the B Corp process, but further than that, we do kind of all sorts of strategy, carbon reporting, etc., and work with a few different certifications, but B Corp being kind of like our core. I co-founded Future Shift about 4.5 years ago now. And I'll be taking the first half of this webinar before passing on to colleague Gavin, who's kind of our lead B Corp consultant now here at Future Shift. And our mission is to kind of redesign sustainability for all business. And what we mean by that is breaking down the obstacles for businesses to interact with the highest levels of sustainability reporting. So making sure that it's cost effective for you to actually engage with high levels of sustainability reporting, but further than that, it's efficient. Like, you've not got enough time in the day to spend hours and hours looking through reports, etc., and working towards certification. So we can help to streamline that in a way that's still embedding education within your business. Then we're on to a winner. So that's a bit about us here at Future Shift. But yeah, I mentioned at the start, happy B Corp month all. It's the time of the month or time of the year rather, that everyone kind of comes together and we can celebrate positive impact as a business. We don't get to do that all the time. So it is quite nice to kind of make a big song and dance around B Corp itself, but also sustainability and driving positive impact. There's a lot of kind of negative press at the moment, a lot of rolling back over in America, etc., of regulation. So it's important that we actually kind of have that ripple effect, get out there, talk about positive impacts, talk about doing better for all, and just engaging with people around what is B Corp, etc. And the thing which has brought everyone together today and you onto this call is the exciting changes coming to the standards, which, yeah, I think are due for full release next month rather. So yeah, slight smoke and mirrors at the moment, but we know probably 99% sure that everything we talk about today should be kind of what we know so far. So B Corp standards, a short history. Let's dig into a history lesson. So back in 2006, B Lab was formed itself over in the US. The three kind of founders wanted to stop shareholder capitalism, got this mindset together. They sold a business for quite a lot of money, but wanted to move away from shareholder profit to stakeholder profit for everyone. In 2007, they started up B Corp certification with their first cohort coming through the BIA, which included people like Patagonia. Then they've kind of kept on iterating standards. And yes, we will be sharing the slides after. I've just seen that one coming through, Kate. They've kept on iterating the standards, essentially. So it's now on its version 6 of the impact assessment itself, for those of you familiar with it. So it has changed for the sustainability landscape. They have adapted. And in 2019 is the most recent one. So it's been quite a while. It's been almost 6 years since version 6 has come out. That's the one that if you are a B Corp, you've probably been working on most recently. In 2020, they announced a revision of the current set of standards, which is a decent amount of time ago. And for the past 5 years, they've been working on this revision, iterating, getting as much feedback from B Corp stakeholders as possible. And in 2026, officially, it is kind of launching to new applications of B Corp. But those timescales are changing slightly. They're technically launching the standards next month, and it's going to affect businesses from July the 1st this year, effectively. So what are the current standards? I'm not going to bore you too much with this, but just to give you a little bit of context in what the current standards are, 800 tick boxes, effectively, or around about that. It's this whole tick box kind of menu option assessment, right? It's logging onto the BIA, working out how many ticks you can kind of fulfill within the online assessment and how it's all kind of relevant towards you. And it's all very points-based, essentially. And it's quite complicated as well. Within those 800 tick boxes, they are split up into 5 impact areas. You've got the workers, environment, customers, community, and governance, with around about an equal amount of tick boxes for all of these, or an equal amount of questions placed within all of these, apart from customers, but you've got a little bit less, which is holistic, but clearly not quite holistic enough for what it needs to be with modern day sustainability. So the point system, it's this menu system, essentially, which I kind of discussed before. It's being able to say what you do right now and how that is kind of equated into points, essentially. And the more ticks you can currently kind of provide evidence for, the more points you are going to get. Depending on the kind of difficulty of the question or the context of the question, how it impacts your business in terms of materiality, it might have a different weighting involved as well. 250 points is the absolute maximum you could get. It's a sliding scale from 0 to 250. 50 points is the average for a business on its first time round, or for like the non-accredited B Corp business. Once they first kind of go into the BIA, they're getting around 50, 50.9. And the passing score is 80. So most companies have this slight kind of gray gap in between 50 and 80. And the whole aspect of B Corp is bridging that gap for them. It's how do I quite get above 50 points? How do I get to 80? And it's all about getting to that threshold. So how is it changing? Or why is it changing, first off? So this is something that we talk about quite often, and it's flattening the climate curve, essentially. So this is a graph which shows our trajectory to kind of averting 2 degrees worth of warming when it comes to like global warming. And carbon emissions, exactly. And this kind of graph shows the trajectory of what it looks like if we were to start implementing radical change, and what that kind of plateaus out at. So you can kind of see that earlier on that we take action, it's not flat, but it's quite a nice little drop in what is needed. It's not kind of this hell-bent kind of almost vertical 90 degrees angle. But unfortunately, we're not really taking that much action at all. We've kind of got to 2025, and we've almost hit, well, we have hit 1.5 degrees warming. We're nearing that 2 degrees warming. And we think of it kind of almost like landing a plane. So if we were to take action earlier, the landing of the plane is quite a nice flat drop almost. It's a landing where everyone claps at the end. However, the later that we're leaving it, it's a scary crash landing. You've got everything going on. It's not ideal at all. And therefore, in terms of interpreting that through a sustainability lens, the changes that are necessary are going to be pretty drastic. What was applicable 6 years ago when B Corp standards came out isn't what is necessary for a business to adapt to right now. If we want to genuinely win the climate crisis, we need whole-scale, almost quite drastic action. And therefore, something like B Corp, which is kind of seen as the highest level of sustainability certifications, needs to adapt towards this. It needs to become more rigorous. We need to almost, we don't want to quite do the crash landing, but we're going to have to start increasing that level of landing, if that makes sense. So we need to flatten this climate curve. And to do so, we need to do more stuff, essentially, as businesses. So not only that, I mean, I kind of just discussed that then, but sustainability has changed. The sustainability landscape is constantly ever changing. The ability to sustain 6 years ago, like I said, is no longer what is relevant now. And therefore, we have to move away from this menu option of you telling B Corp what you do good as a business, which is currently what you do, right? You can select everything in the whole assessment and do nothing in the environment, for example, and you can still certify as a B Corp certification or B Corp certified business. It doesn't seem quite right. We kind of know better than ever what is necessary to do, and therefore the certification needs to adapt to that. B Corp can kind of dictate to you that you should do this, you need to do this, in order for you to be seen as a business that meets the highest level of sustainability. Not only this, but B Corp itself is kind of further being put under the spotlight. You may have seen kind of different things on LinkedIn, etc., of people just looking through a more advanced lens as such, into kind of whether the certification is built for purpose still. When you've got businesses like Nespresso, etc., coming in, it's brought in a bit of furore into people being like, or questioning whether the certification means that you're a good business. So by improving the rigor of the assessment, it will enhance the reputation of certified B Corps themselves. And by doing so, it should remove this kind of lens of businesses being like, okay, can I actually trust you even though you're a B Corp? Can I trust a business like Nespresso, for example? I know that if a business going through all these requirements now meets all of these requirements and becomes certified as a B Corp, I will hands down think you are a great business. You're a business which is built for what is necessary right now. You're a business who has met all of these different requirements, and as such, I will give you more credibility. Whereas right now, if you're a B Corp certified business, because of the disparity in terms of like what is applicable to you, I have no idea. I can't immediately trust you. So it should signal better trust signals. Not only this, but a bit more into the reasoning why we need these changes. So right now, it's pretty complex in terms of becoming B Corp because you've got this menu option, because you've got so many different types of businesses which could be providing evidence for these different elements or requirements or tick boxes. There's no real uniform approach towards actually applying the evidence towards this. There's no uniform approach to understanding what that business does if it is certified as a B Corp. Therefore, it's hard to kind of weigh up the different businesses, who's better than who. You can look on the point system online, but that's only a very niche amount of businesses we're going to do that. And to kind of put everyone in the same bucket, to say, you're all great, you're all B Corp certified, it becomes difficult to kind of actually understand context into how good that different business is. Not only this, the current BIA is pretty hard to navigate because you've got 800 tick boxes, you've got 250 questions. It's all quite complicated. Us as consultants, we see different evidence. It's kind of, because it's so complicated, it's audited slightly different. You've got subjective opinions going on through the auditing process sometimes. And it becomes quite difficult to really kind of say, yes, this is guaranteed to kind of pass the evidence and auditing process. So hopefully they can make it a bit more uniform. That would be fantastic to kind of allow everyone to understand what's going on with the complexity and what do I need to do. The other reason, which is kind of necessary to change the assessment itself and to iterate and advance this, is, well, there's a bit of rolling back going on with other certifications and regulations, but there's so much out there now. There's a three-letter acronym soup in terms of CSRD, TCFD. There's things going on with CSRD. There's things going on with CDP. There's literally so many different frameworks and regulations which businesses are asked to do now that B Corp is at risk of just being another regulation. It's at risk of just being more frameworks for you to do, more admin, essentially. And the vast amount of people that I know that work in sustainability internally in businesses, yeah, they're just bogged down with all of these reporting frameworks and all of these different elements to actually just provide information on and do reporting for, which means that you aren't doing. You're not actually actioning change. You're just providing information and providing data. So if B Corp can align itself with interoperability to be more aligned to different certifications and different frameworks, hopefully that should allow for more efficiency when it comes to all of these different frameworks being applied to your business. So B Corp itself is trying to align the new standards with current frameworks and certifications that are already out there. And hopefully that's going to make things just more efficient and allow you to action more change. So a quick kind of summary of the differences and how they look. Current system, 5 impact areas, 250 questions, 800 possible tick boxes, all about getting points. This menu option meant that you could do what you want. You just tell B Corp what you do as a business and why you're a good business. And like it's open to gaming the system effectively. Through going through it like over 100 times with different businesses, we know what's efficient. We know the things which are going to get the most points reward for the least effort almost. And that isn't necessarily things which are most materially beneficial to you becoming a good business. It's things which are just like, they're just open and low-hanging fruit effectively. And you could effectively just game the system by doing this. Now we're moving on to kind of 9 core pillars away from these 5 impact areas. So we're expanding the depth. We've got more in terms of foundation requirements that are being kind of put on your business. So they're saying, so actually whether you're actually eligible to become a B Corp in the first place. You will still have to complete the BIA, which I'll go into a little bit further in a short second. So the BIA is still going to say that in some form of context. Beyond that, there's going to be kind of stricter uniform interpretation. So the way that it's audited is going to be slightly stricter to a certain degree. It's more obvious what B Corp have done. They've provided requirements now, and they're very transparent in what meets the requirements for each requirement or sub-requirement. And they are dictating your obligations. So they're telling you exactly what you need to do as a business in your context, so size and sector, what you need to do in order to be certified as a B Corp. So moving away from you telling them, cool, we do this, can we get above this point system? Now we can be certified. It's more, if you want to be B Corp certified, you have to do this because we know that throughout the changing sustainability landscape, this is what is necessary right now to avoid that severe drop when it comes to kind of crash landing that plane. We want to make it a slightly more coasted, happy clappy landing. So what do we know and what do we not know? So what we know right now is that any company who applies after January the 1st, 2026 will be affected. The old BIA is going to completely go at that point. So if you certify for the very first time after 2026 or after January the 1st, 2026, you are going to be affected. You're going to be working on the new set of assessments. So if you're a business looking to certify, either hurry up and apply on the current framework where we have a bit of an understanding, or maybe delay it for a month or so and just get a bit of a sense check as to kind of what does it look like to actually become a B Corp under the new requirements. The other aspect which you are going to be affected by is if your certification date is after July the 1st, including July the 1st this year, then you are going to be affected and you're going to be working towards the new standards. So the submission date, if you're not aware, is 6 months prior to your recertification date, which is done intentionally to hopefully provide a slightly smoother process so that actually you submit and you can recertify and kind of still retain that badge within that 3rd-year date. So that's fairly recent news. We actually thought, or the previous understanding was that anyone with the recertification submission date after January the 1st, 2026 is going to be affected, but they've changed that as of about 2 weeks ago. So that if your submission date is after July the 1st, 2025, this affects you now. There's going to be some form of grace period. It's not going to be completely black and white. If you are a business and you're trying to apply for B Corp or recertify as a B Corp, you've not had much time to kind of deal with the new requirements, there's going to be a form of grace period. They're going to kind of work with you to a certain extent to make sure that you can meet the requirements, or to give you that extra bit of time. And like I said previously, going through all of the requirements and the draft standards as they sit right now, there is much more clarity in what meets the evidence exactly. So it's giving a bit more clarity in terms of this is the exact policy or documentation that I need to provide. Previously, it was a bit harder. It wasn't as transparent. So that's good. What we don't know, however, is it's on its pretty much final iteration. Barring that it's going to kind of launch officially in the next month. So it's not 100% that it's these standards that we've kind of looked through and we've dug deep on won't change. But we'll know shortly enough. 99% sure not much is going to change now. After 5 years, you would have thought they're going to be pretty set at this point. And we also don't know, like I mentioned previously, the B impact assessment in its current form is still going to exist. So you're still going to have to kind of complete the BIA and remove the points association, but show that you have kind of answered the assessment correctly, effectively. So we don't know what that assessment is going to look like in its current form within the new standards. I do know, or we know that the environment section of the BIA is going to be removed. I would imagine anywhere where it kind of double crosses the current standards effectively will be removed. So there might be things in governance, mission statement, etc. will removed. I imagine it'll be a much more redacted, smaller BIA itself. Now moving on to some kind of some of the sticking points of where people are probably a bit resistant to the changes. A lot of people like the points. The points were useful. The points provided something which is really hard to quantify, like sustainability in your business, and gave a clear quantification towards it. Numbers are handy. Numbers, the board can understand. Numbers, finance people understand. It gave a clear kind of progression path. It gave a clear understanding of, cool, we've achieved another 10 points. So I agree, I liked the points. However, by removing them, it's stopping this points chasing effectively. So if you're a business and you're recertifying, that you currently kind of had to show some form of progression in terms of like achieving more points. And you can do that by just applying the changes, which are the lowest hanging fruit. They are not the things which are going to make your business better. They are just the things which are most efficient to do. So hopefully by removing the points, we're avoiding this chasing aspect. We're avoiding this kind of seeking of progression without actually really evolving as a business and adapting. And we're going to more of a requirement basis where it's just a bit more understanding of this is definitive, as opposed to, cool, you got 10 more points, but actually did that make you a better business? And like I said, performance recognition is still useful though. You still need to understand how you can progress as a business, and being a B Corp is not the winner. It's not the finish line effectively. So how do you kind of ensure that there's still some progression being dangled or encouraged? And how are they going to give you this recognition? So within each of these 10 requirements, or 9 requirements rather, there's going to be a meet or exceed level within sub-requirements within each of these 9 areas. So it might look something like this, effectively. So instead of right now, when you log onto the B Corp directory, you can kind of see the points association through each of the 5 impact areas. B Corp is going to have sub-requirements, so things that you have to do, tasks, effectively, within each of these. And some of them are going to be meets, being the minimum standard that you have to do or have to fulfill. Some of them being exceed. So that's kind of going above and beyond. And the way that this kind of might be displayed is something similar to this, where if you've absolutely smashed it out of the park, if you're a company like Patagonia or someone like that, for example, you might have quite a lot of these dark green areas. If you're a company kind of at the minimum level, you might just have everything light green. You might just be meeting. You might do things in certain areas where you exceed. Hopefully, the kind of the progression plan for most businesses will be to essentially get more rings or more slices of cheese, effectively, to kind of fill those areas and to kind of be seen as a business which exceeds in everywhere. So that's the way in which you're kind of going to be seen at a board level. You can talk with people that we meet, we exceed within these different areas. Clearly, there's some improvement points that we need to do here. This is our strategy to do so. The other point is impact business models, those other elements where you, as a business, have positively impacted a certain stakeholder or a certain subset of stakeholders. Different level, you do something a bit different. You work for underserved populations, you hire people through underserved populations, you potentially give back a certain degree of your business profits or revenue or time. These different elements, you might be worker-owned, they are still going to be recognized as something extra that your business does, and kind of be given in these kind of bronze, silver, gold levels, where you might be seen as a leader, you might be seen as advanced, but a bit similar to how they used to do a best of the world in B Corps within different areas. It would be like an additional badge, which you get alongside your B Corp certification, which proves that you have an impact business model and you've spit out the park with it, or you're developing towards it effectively. So you're still going to get recognized if you have one of those IBMs. If you're an EOT, for example, you're still going to be given an extra pat on the back for it. But not all of our businesses are the same. So this is like a common question, right? If they're suddenly moving to a thing where they're going to dictate exactly what you need to do, you've got the beauty of B Corps is you've got service-based industry, you've got products, you've got people from tourism and significant impacts, all certifying under this one umbrella, which has allowed B Corp to kind of continue this trajectory of gaining momentum and bringing this wide holistic community together. So how can they contextualize if they're demanding that you all do the same thing? Effectively, you're not all going to be doing the same thing. It's all going to be very dependent on what your business looks like. So there's going to be these context mechanisms, effectively. So your requirements within each of these areas are going to be adapted within the sub-requirements, which are the kind of task level section. Almost think of them like the questions specifically. And they're going to be tailored depending on your size and your sector of your organizations. So if you are a double XL business and you've got 1.5 billion revenue, that potentially might be an espresso, for example, they're going to have to fulfill heaps and heaps more of the requirements than a small design agency who might be fitting within this small amount of workers, less than 2 million in revenue, who are going to have to do quite a lot less within their context and mechanisms or context and size than someone like that. So there's different levels towards it dependent on your context as a business. So I've covered the overarching themes there of impact business models still being alive. Performance recognition is still going to be there. So in terms of actually kind of meeting or exceeding the different requirements, there's still going to be an appreciation to allow you to progress. There's some contextualization mechanisms to ensure that, yes, all businesses are being required to do all of these things, but depending on your size and your sector, you're still going to be kind of like split up into different elements, or you're going to see a different amount of tasks. The other bit being foundation requirements here on the left-hand side. This is literally, that's the element of being eligible to actually go through the B Corp process. So if you are recertifying, likely you know that you're eligible, basically. You've also met the legal requirement. You've done a risk assessment on top of this in terms of your supply chain, who you're working for or who you're working with. And then also an assessment into what impact business models are relevant towards you. On this right-hand side, we've also got the inclusion of all of the different subset of impact topics. So we've got purpose and stakeholder governance, fair work, JEDI, human rights, climate action, environmental stewardship, and government affairs and collective action. I'm going to go into all of them now. Instead, I'm going to leave that to Gavin. Go over.
Lovely stuff. Nice one, Will. So yeah, just a bit of a background, guys. I'm Gavin. I'm another part of the fabric at Future Shift. So we just seen Will kind of break down the why, like why have the new standards come in, why are they important, what was the need to change, and essentially what we're going to take you through now is the what. So what can we expect? We'll give a kind of overarching summary of the 9 impact topics. We won't go too kind of heavy on task level. Rather, we'll look at kind of like general themes and different instances, what you can expect on a broad level from small to large businesses. So just kind of first off the bat, we will look at purpose and stakeholder governance. A lot of people will be familiar with this from previous assessments. If you're not, it's essentially all about how you deal with your stakeholders, right? How do you reach out to them? How do you kind of gather feedback? How do they feed into that B Corp value of community? So on the top left, we see stakeholder engagement and governance. So what does that mean? Essentially what it means is the stakeholders now in the new standards are going to inform what are the material issues specific to your business. So we'll be focusing on quite in a centric focus. We'll be seeing how they inform how you move forward as a B Corp. This will generally lead into leadership. So the corporate oversight, look at how that kind of moves forward as one body. Some new inclusions in this are grievance mechanisms and accountability. So when we think of any sort of complaints or feedback, how we kind of receive it, how we respond it, how we have this kind of transparency and reporting in place to ensure that 1, it's dealt with properly, and 2, we can improve going forward. Another kind of part of this is in the old assessment, we were kind of used to the mission statement and purpose, right? That was kind of one of the first questions that we've seen. And we've kind of moved past this to encompass stakeholders really informing it and kind of setting out them material issues. So just moving on to the kind of next topic. Fair work. So in the initial consultations, we've seen it coming across as fair wages and workplace culture, but they've now been combined under this heading of fair work. It's fairly self-explanatory to most people what fair work is, but essentially it looks at 3 things. It looks at workplace culture, it looks at communication and feedback, and wage equity. So when you think of workplace culture, we like to call culture or refer to as something that happens when you're not looking, right? So what kind of culture can we instill to our staff and our employees that ensure 1, they're heard, 2, they're valued, and 3, they have a voice in how they can kind of propel this forward. A great way of doing this, and a lot of kind of companies use it, is a CIPD benchmark. It's a really strong comparison of how you can kind of compare where you are currently into these sort of improvements off the back of surveys and really listening to your employees. Part of that listening, obviously, is communication and feedback. So when we think of communication and feedback, we're thinking, how does it work internally, horizontally, vertically? What sort of feedback systems do we have in place? Is it easy for our employees to speak up? Is it easy for them to feel like they're heard? That's really kind of paramount to what fair work is in itself. Third one, when we look at wage equity, we are thinking of, first thing that comes to mind is living wage, right? Are we paying our employees a living wage? It's a big part of the assessment previously, and that is continued. So we're really kind of looking out for that living wage certification. If not, we'll be able to prove it on kind of country by country level, taking in the wage and similar kind of industry standards. Another kind of part of this, and this is more specific to larger businesses, would be that B Corp are then kind of looking for you to reach out to your suppliers and gain a kind of understanding, are our suppliers reaching this kind of same level of standard that we hold ourselves to, or are they falling down in parts? So there's an onus on kind of reaching out to your suppliers if you're that larger company, and really getting an understanding of, are they treating their workers the same as we are? So if we think of B Corp as community, it's that sphere of influence. How can we not only improve internally, but how can we reach out externally where we have more impact? Moving on to the next section, we will be looking at justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. So as Will kind of touched on and mentioned, we've seen quite a bit of unfortunate pullback and push against justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, right? There's probably a few figureheads in government that you could think of that are really pushing this agenda against it. So in quite simple terms, it's really refreshing. It's great to see that B Corp are kind of doubling down on this, right? They've not only kind of expanded the scope, but they've also provided a great set of examples of how you can do this. First and foremost, in this section, what you'll be looking at is really bringing that conversation into the middle, right? And that happens through discussions internally. Surveys are excellent ways to kind of gather that feedback anonymously. And then off the back of that, you can have that internal discussion, ask questions. Are people's voices being heard? Are we looking out for the different diverse groups in work? Does everyone feel valued? Is it easy to speak up and to kind of speak out about these ideas without feeling like it's a bit of a scary subject? Second of all, this really leads into in-house leadership, right? Everything good kind of flows from the top. And when you work for somebody that kind of resonates that ethos and that mission, it means so much in terms of feeling valued at work, one, but also feeling comfortable, bringing the same self that you would have at home also to your workplace. It's paramount and it's really fundamental. So B Corp essentially in the new standards provide a great scope for kind of implementing these different actions. Depending on your size, you will have to implement between 2 to 7 JEDI actions as such, and they'll all be outlined in your action list. So if we think of some examples of these, it's generally a publicly facing JEDI statement that would be shared internally as well. Through the back of the surveys and the feedback, you'd be looking at reviewing and updating policies off the back of the feedback, looking at ensuring that your hiring practices and job descriptions are very inclusive. They include kind of inclusive language. You have a strong language guide. And then second to that, when you're looking at bigger companies, you're thinking like affinity groups, resource groups, right? How can our voice within really be propelled by our own employees, giving them the power to do what they want? And this all feeds into kind of improving in-house knowledge and capacity on JEDI initiatives. So it's really refreshing to see, and we'll just move on to the next topic now, Will. So human rights, everyone knows what it means, but what does it mean in kind of B Corp's umbrella and a B Corp's framework? So again, it's great to see it kind of doubling down on human rights. When we think of human rights, we not only think internally, but we also think externally. So how do we measure this? How do we look at, are we satisfying our kind of obligations? Are we ensuring that there's no human rights abuses? If there is a risk, are we identifying it and mitigating against it in due time? And essentially, this is kind of carried out in 2 ways, right? You're looking at due diligence and you're looking at risk assessments. But as I kind of said previously, front and center always is communication. You need to be tight to your suppliers. You need to have that relationship with your suppliers to really understand it and report on it efficiently. This element of reporting feeds into the accountability, right? Is our kind of leading body, our CEO, our managers, are they proactive about this? Are they definitely kind of measuring it properly? And this all kind of feeds into ethical supply chains. How can we empower our organization to do this. Comes in various ways, such as questionnaires and screening policies. What it does is it shows you're being proactive about it and you're ensuring that there is no kind of human rights abuses along your supply chain. If there is, you're dealing with them. On to the next, we will be looking at climate action. Here we go, environment. It's great to see this popping up, and it's great to see it really kind of gaining legs and evolving from what it was. So previously in the last impact assessment and last standards, we've seen that, yes, it was important to kind of measure your emissions and to report on them. But we're really seeing the value in the fact that now in the new standards, the onus is on doing this year by year so that you can show this progress. And the reasoning behind this is, one, it's just paramount that everyone is in this stage of reporting on their emissions, understands how to do it. But second of all, if we don't know what we're doing, if we don't know what we're calculating, how do we progress, essentially? And that's what SBTI is. It's our science-based targets. So when we think of science-based targets under the new framework, the onus from B Corp is kind of, yes, have this long-term aim of, net zero and big grand kind of strategy plans, but it's really refreshing to see that they want to see short-term gains. So they want to see short-term objectives clearly mapped out by your governing bodies. It's filtered down to all levels of employment, and your own organization really understands, what are we doing in 5 years? What are we doing in 10 years? How is this actually feeding and actually changing things? And this is all essentially under the umbrella of a climate transition plan. This will encompass some more things around biodiversity, but essentially it's your guiding document. How are we transitioning to make sure that we're reducing emissions? We're being kind of as ethical as possible. We're moving in that right direction. So it's really refreshing to see this has kind of moved on up again. It's taken that next step, and it's ensuring that what we're doing now is just moving to the next level. So moving on to the next section, environmental stewardship and circularity. We have the age-old story, right? We need to be able to monitor energy, water, and waste. Think of your utility bills, think of your usage bills. It's straightforward stuff. Everyone can do it. And it's paramount and kind of fundamental to moving towards a reduction in emissions, but also understanding your environmental impacts across your operations and across your supply chain. Within that, we also have inclusions of biodiversity. There will be an expectation for larger companies to kind of move past this. If there's bigger infrastructural projects, expansion plans, have we considered biodiversity? Do we know the effects that it's going to carry? What is our growth going to affect from an environmental standpoint? And then we also have a social standpoint as well. When we look at circular economy, the proof is quite literally in the pudding. Circular, what does that mean? It means reuse, recycle, extend, end of life. So in B Corp's new requirements, what they really look at is they want you to understand, can you have a reduction in virgin materials? So it's obviously a lot more intensive to have virgin materials in your kind of product design. They'll be looking at things like packaging again. They'll be focusing on our end-of-life treatment. Where is it going once it leaves us? How does our customer get rid of it? Do they know how to get rid of it? It really feeds into this kind of circular idea. And another kind of key facet of that would be, do we have reuse schemes or in place? Do our customers know how to go about this? And can we really educate them on this point? And then just moving on to our next section, government affairs and collective action. So we have the great Greta Thunberg front and center there, and that really kind of implies what this section is about, right? We think of public policy and advocacy. What does that mean under the framework of B Corp? It means strengthening your voice as a business, but also kind of propelling that community movement. I'm sure everyone knows, even within friend groups, within home, if you can kind of pass on strong messages to your friends to change their ways, it genuinely works. So when we think of ways to do that as a business, what do we think of? We think of thought leadership, engaging on panel presentations, signing petitions, stakeholder collaboration. We think of industry-wise engagement. We've seen one of our clients have excellent kind of inroads in this, where they have a digital product passport on the bottom of their products, and they've really collaborated with different bodies to ensure that they have foresight on their supply chain. And it essentially feeds into this like guiding force of B Corp, right? It's the exciting stuff, the kind of activist part of it. If you think of Patagonia, they really empower their employees to take it into their own hands and not be afraid to engage in these conversations, both on a public level and within your business. And then finally, in the last section, we have complementary impact topics. And quite simply, we're looking at two things here, right? We're looking at accountability and governance, and we're looking at transparency and progress tracking. And this is like the really nice point of the B Corp assessment. It's where you're reaching the end, kind of finishing line, and you have to get all your kind of things in one place and show off what you've done and why you've done it. So what B Corp are looking for here is they're looking for you to outline what were your kind of material goals and issues across the impact topics, which would have been kind of taken from stakeholder engagement and them kind of initial conversations from your leadership team. And they're looking for you to explain who was responsible, who was kind of behind these changes and improvements. They'll be looking for sign off on each one. And then another key part of it is we'll have a signed letter from your kind of highest governing body, your management, to secure and kind of confirm that what you've done and how you've answered and supplied the information is crystal clear. So that was probably quite heavy. It was 9 impact topics. Tried to keep it as generic as possible so we don't scare off anyone and we can give a kind of decent grounding in it. As Will said, it's going to change depending on the size of your business on task level, but I'll just hand it back to Will to talk a bit further.
Nice one, thank you, Gav. And yeah, I realise we've ran slightly over in terms of our timings, and we're going to have more time for Q&A, etc. But there's just so much information to kind of go through that I guess it deserves that kind of level of time. It's a lot of information to get into. So we just heard 9 impact topics, all the changes, it's getting tougher, etc. We're having to adapt slightly. We've got heaps more sub requirements being put on us. There's a lot of new things to do. So what is our advice is to get started now, which obviously we're going to say as a consultancy. But that B Corp takes a while. Anyway, it's quite a big step as a business to do. It's going to get quite a lot harder than that, but get yourself as much time as possible so that, again, keep on referring to that graph. You can kind of have that nice landing. You're not looking to kind of make these wholesale changes really, really quick. Have a look at where we are. So we have kind of adapted our service essentially. So we are still looking to roll out the same thing essentially. It's still going to all apply, which is this 3-step methodology. Baseline, understand where you are right now. Baseline, what you've got as a business, how you fit in with a new set of requirements. We then need to outline how does that sit within your business and what are the gaps essentially, where do you need to be, how are we going to get there? And then the 3rd step, obviously the big industrial part, is implementing those changes themselves. And for those of you that are aware of our platform previously, we've created this project management tool, which provides you with all the resources in order to attain B Corp certification in the first place. And we've adapted this, so we created a new platform for each of these different areas, which is your own individual tracks as a business, so that when you log on, you will only see all the requirements that you have to do for your niche of business, essentially, for your track. And much like the previous one, it's going to look very similar in terms of having a background, a big resource sheet into kind of context, bit of education in what you're doing. You're going to be able to actually assign different people, different roles within here. It's still going to be very holistic and touch different areas of business. So you want different departments involved. Then within each of the actual kind of resource sheets themselves, you're going to have some key terms into what you need to do. You're going to have some workflows. You're going to have a progress bar, which tells you the completion area. You're going to have a note from us telling you the reasoning behind it, step-by-step implementation, templates if they're useful, so calculation tools and policies. We'll have everything there for you, potentially workshops which might apply, and then an evidence repository system, which allows you to kind of upload the evidence for that certain requirement onto the system so that we can track the progress of the project completely. We can audit it. We can kind of communicate with you internally and say, this is right, this is wrong, which stops the need for back and forth and a lot of overrun kind of consultancy fees. So yeah, we've built a new service already, ready to launch. We've gone ahead and written, I think it's 146 different resource sheets now. So it's off the bat, ready to go. So our advice, get stuck in. We'll be running workshops pretty much from the end of this month to kind of just get involved with. So celebrate B Corp month by doing more B Corping effectively. But yeah, if you're interested, get in touch effectively. So open up the floors to any Q&As. I see that we've obviously not given a lot of time here. I see there's one from Pristine, which says, you have a certification date after, or your certification is due to expire in October 2027. Do you need to reapply? You will need to reapply, but your submission will only be necessary 6 months prior to October, which in my head is harder to work out.
It's April.
April. There we go. So in April 2027, you will have to apply then. So get to work on them right now, but don't actually you don't have to submit until then. Okay, I can see Ben.
Question for Ben.
Yeah. Hey, Will. I'll just turn on the camera and mic.
Easy.
Yeah, Ben here from Urgio. Thanks so much for that. It was really, really helpful. I saw that you guys got your B Corp certification the same month and year that we did in February last year. So we're sort of on the exact same schedule for recertifying in 2027. So I was just curious, what do you see as being like the things that you're going to need to particularly kind of focus on as you work towards your 2027 kind of recertification as like a small service business like we are?
I think from our end, we were fairly new as a business when we even kind of certified in the first place. So we'd set out lots of goals, effectively, lots of targets, but in the same way that most businesses are here in the same way, we haven't got much progression as of yet into those goals. We've set net zero goals. We've got all these different areas of what we want to impact, but we're going to move into a place where it's actually showing this progression. How have you advanced? So I think like really getting a move on and working towards how we're going to be net zero, etc. Just talking the talk. Actually, walking the walk is going to be our main focus, and probably similar to you.
Cool. Okay. Cheers.
No worries. Do we have any other questions coming in? I'll leave it a second. If not, I'll wrap up, let you get back to your jam sandwiches. If anyone has any questions after this and something sat with you and you kind of think, oh, Kate.
Oh, nice one.
I'm in. Kate, I'll let you kind of unmute yourself.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. I just wanted to see, you said at the end that you're going to run a few more workshops on this. How do we get notified about those? Or do we just sort of look out for them on LinkedIn? Or how would we go about sort of finding out what the next step is with you guys?
We send out some comms just after this as kind of a post-seminar, post-session newsletter almost, with recording of this, some slides, and kind of the drop-in sessions that we're going to offer, as well as the workshops themselves to actually kind of get engaged with where you are as a business.
Okay, and would they be sort of like workshops that we would pay for? Or are they like with you, or are they sort of just drop-in ones that are free for anyone? Or
so there'll be a couple which will be drop-in sessions, which will be quite informative and quite broad. And then we'll be offering kind of the more paid for classic session of a workshop themselves, would be more one-to-one and where you sit as a business.
Yeah, because I feel like that would be really useful after this, because ours is up in 2026, so we'll be one of the first cohorts to go through with the new ones. So yeah, I feel like any workshops and sessions would be really useful, at least initially, and then maybe sort of go on to one-to-ones from there. So yeah, I'd be really interested to see a bit more information on that. Thank you.
We'll send it round just after this. Yeah, thank you for asking that, because we probably didn't cover it as well as we maybe should have. But no, good luck with the 26. We'll be in touch.
Thank you.
No worries. All right. If nothing else, I will leave a couple minutes extra. Most people seem to have kind of disappeared anyway. But thank you all for attending. Thanks for spending an hour diving into the Corp wonders and what's coming next. Kyle.
Oh, maybe one more.
No, that was me just saying thank you. Raise my hand. Appreciate it. Catch you later. Cheers.
Nice one. Thank you all for coming. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, guys. Have a lovely day.